Hello, my beautiful friend. Welcome to A Time to Care, the Caregivers Podcast. I'm Isabel Melgarejo, your host. And today I have Ryan Botzong with me.
For non-financial. Yeah.
And I should have asked if that was the right way of pronouncing your name.
Oh, well, that's a whole nother conversation. It's pronounced Putzen and it's spelled with a B. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so you're not alone. Most people say Botzong.
Okay, well, I should have asked that before starting
It's fine. You're
the
good.
recording.
It's fine.
So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you help people in this world.
Yes. So I am in the financial services industry and, just help different families, clients, business owners with a multitude of different topics in their financial plan. And so I work for an independent advisor here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas for non-financial. And that's really what we're focused on is just simplifying, what someone's plan is and just navigating through really just life. I mean, that's the biggest thing is just how do we make things less stressful for our clients?
So, when you're talking about a financial plan, what
hmm
are the things that you consider that are important for every family to have?
So, in terms of importance, the first question that we ask is what are the goals? And so, when we look at someone's plan, there's a lot of different factors to go through to think about, okay, what is the most important things to have in place? Most people would say retirement is a big goal. And so that retirement plan is going to be one of the foundations to put in place. For other people, that could be planning for kids' college or making sure there's a risk management plan in place for their family. So that's also a really good foundation to think through. But then at the same turn, if you're talking to a business owner, I mean, these can be really complex topics like employee benefits and thinking about taxes. So that is it's more of a loaded topic in terms of like what is the most important. But as I think about just the everyday family, retirement plan, risk management plan, and then what are the goals for their expenses, surplus? How do they look at savings? Just so they know how can they think about, their overall savings and their budget. So,
So, I would think like having a plan would be your step number one.
mhm.
And then what are like step two, three, four? I don't know.
Yeah, so having the plan is correct. You have to have that first before anything. And then step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, really comes down to the second would be okay, after you develop the plan, what are solutions in the financial services space to help really enhance that plan? So, for example, just thinking about a retirement plan, for example, if someone says, hey, I really want to achieve retirement, well, there's different retirement solutions to achieve that goal. So that'd be like step number 2. And then if someone's like, well, I have to think about taxes and I have to think through how do I mitigate taxes? Step 3 is how can we implement a tax strategy for somebody? And then if someone's thinking about, man, well, I'm thinking about the next 20, 30 years of my life, there's different events that happen. There's things that, I go through like, disabilities or thinking about long-term care. And that could be something to prepare for. It's not a fun conversation,
No,
right?
it's not.
It's not something that's exciting, but that could be like the next step is making sure there's a solution for that specifically. So it really goes down in layers. And that's why, Isabel, I say that ultimately, the goal should be number one of developing a plan. Like, what is the most important thing? And then how can we just supplement down the line for someone's overall financial plan?
To talk about risks because I don't think we talk enough about risks, and you brought that into the conversation. So I want to steer the conversation into that. So, obviously, risks, and we talk about risks because we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know if we're going to die tomorrow on a car accident or if we're
Mm-hmm.
going to live to 100 and just die in our sleep while we're driving and visiting our friends that are 20
Mm-hmm.
years younger than us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But when you're designing the financial plan, you have to sort of cover everything that could happen.
Yes.
So, when you're talking with clients, what are some things that you bring up? Like, hey, let's pay attention to what risks and what are, like, for people out there listening to us, what do you think are good good conversations where they can start thinking about risks and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know a better word to call it, but
Yeah.
things to
It
just pay attention to.
yeah. Well, I I believe that's why we got connected is because we both have this focus on risk and we know the importance. And really, if I had to describe risk, it would be in terms of like a financial landscape or just someone's personal life and landscape, it's something that we avoid talking. I mean, that's what it is because if you think about if you think about all the risks in life or all the risk in finance, they're not fun topics. They're not. And so if you're just talking in a financial services standpoint, there are management approaches that we think through like estate planning and building out wills and trust, life insurance, protecting your family, long-term care, disability insurance, and all these things they protect against events and risk. All that to say, no one likes talking about it. No one does. And
I love that. I'm gonna do something about that because I just loved it.
but to answer your question, Isabel, I would say for me, and this took me actually a while to understand, most of the time how I introduce these conversations, it always goes back to somebody or someone or some people that they love. Because again, life insurance with a passing, estate planning, long-term care, they're not fun topics. But the goal and the purpose of these topics, solutions, is to take care of loved ones and your family. And that is how I introduce the conversation because I agree with everybody. Look, I have thought about it, you plan for it. It's not fun. Like it is not fun at all. But even for me, for example, like having a fiance, like getting life insurance, going through the process, I was like, this is not a joyful experience. You're thinking about, well, yeah, if something were to happen, am I taking care of somebody else? But I knew deep down in my heart, well, yeah, I would love for my fiance to be taken care of, right? I would not want to be, putting her in a financial burden or constraint. So that's a long-winded way to say, Isabel, they're not fun conversations, but how I start those conversations, it always begins with, okay, who do you want to protect and who do you really want to take care of? That's important to you.
I remember many years ago, someone came and asked me, they were selling me life insurance. And I was like, if I die, nobody cares if, like, financially, if I died. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, you're right. If you have young kids and if you pass, well, probably you're concerned about their well being.
Hmm.
um and being taken care for. So yeah, I love your perspective of coming to these conversations from who do you love and how you want to care for them
Yeah.
no matter
It
what happens in life.
it is, and it always comes from what I've seen. It always comes from something personal. And just like you said, like, talk to me 10 years ago, if someone talked to me about life insurance, I'd be like, I don't, what's the point? But now, even now that I'm experiencing it, now that I know, well, yeah, really, I would just feel so terrible to put someone I love in really a bad spot. So it's really all perspective, and it's all living through it to see the importance of it.
So what is out there? What are solutions? And I'm not saying a specific because every family and every person
Hmm.
has uh different needs and different situations, but what sort of products exist out there that people can come and talk with you or any other financial expert and say, hey,
Yeah.
I want more information about this whatever product.
Yeah. And you're talking about more of like risk management. You're
Yeah.
talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's life insurance, for example.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. So there's life insurance to take care of a financial burden that would happen if someone were to pass. And there's different types of life insurance out there. The the main takeaway with all of it, not to like go down a very extensive rabbit hole, the main takeaway with life insurance is that just like from where I started, it all comes down to the client's goals, right? That is at the forefront of every conversation because there's all different types of life insurance. There's all different, ways they can be structured. And so just knowing, okay, what are the client's goals and what is the best solution in that life insurance space? And then there's, different types of solutions with disability. So if you know, a someone's in a profession like being a dentist or a lawyer, and if they were injured or disabled and they lost a lot of their income from what they did, how can they find a solution to replace that income if they're disabled? There's also long-term care insurance, which is really focused on the and again, not fun topics, I want to preface, but really focused on the last 10, 15, 20 years of someone's life. This is, talking about if someone goes into a facility, if they need at home care, there are different solutions to protect against that financial burden because the main takeaway and the reason why long term care came about was it is not cheap. It is not a
Yeah.
cheap event. And so how can we protect against those events? And just like any solution out there, there are different ways to structure long-term care insurance. And we as advisors need to make sure what are the client's goals and how can we just make sure they're in the right type of solution. So that's all on the risk management front. I mean, with retirement, investments, that's a whole different conversation. However, that's more focused on like what's really out there for protecting against risk.
So at least for my clients, and I don't know if it happens the same to you, but when they come to me, they don't know where to start framing. And do you experience the same? And if you do, how do you recommend starting finding clarity in what you want? And
Yeah. This is such a good question because when you're in when your day-to-day is helping people, the hardest thing is showing them how you need to help them and why it's important. It's the hardest thing. It's the most frustrating thing because you know it's important. And it's how can you bridge that gap in saying, hey, this is why it's very important. And Isabel, I've found a couple different ways that have really helped me bridge that gap. The first is, like I talked about on the life insurance side, is really just personal experience. And so, you know, going back to long-term care, I saw most of my family go through those types of event. Now, thankfully, it didn't cause this massive, huge burden. Like it didn't destroy the family, but it still was a burden. And so in terms of talking through like how do I bridge the gap, talking to somebody like why would long-term care be important? For me, I just go back personally like saying, "Hey, this is what I saw in my own family." And yes, it wasn't something that was detrimental. However, I would say they would be a lot happier if they would have actually went through this. That's the first thing is just going through like personal experience. And the second is really, this goes back to what we've talked about before, is just asking those right questions on what really is important. So, for example, if someone is trying to understand and see, the value of protecting or just managing risk in any different types of unforeseen events, just asking them like, what is the most important thing to you for your family? Hear them out and just listen on what is the most important thing. And then from there, you really have to see from that, would you want to see something really bad happen to them? And I mean, it's again, not a comfortable conversation, right? And so it's just asking those questions. Would you want to see X, Y, and Z happen? And most of the time, people are going to say, no, I don't. I don't want that to happen. And that's where you can say, okay, well, this is why.
Has anybody said yes?
Well, I will say, there are times, there are times where you talk about, and the topics like around personal finances, there, there are sensitive topics, right? So when we talk about these things, I mean, I can't say I haven't had a conversation where I personally don't agree with how people look at their own finances, meaning like, hey, I don't really care if this happens if I were to pass away. And so I don't personally agree with that, but at the same time, if that's their personal belief, well, I mean, certain point you can only change someone's personal belief to a certain extent. So, yeah, I mean, I've had interesting conversations to say the least. To say the least on that.
Oh, I find that so interesting because I
Yeah.
I don't care. If I leave a mess, I don't care.
I You would think. Yeah, I know. You would think. But yeah, those are some of the harder conversations, and that's not even in my opinion, this hopefully just take this as my opinion. That's not a personal financial opinion. That's more of just like it's more of a moral opinion, right? You have to think, okay, how do we kind of talk through this moral conversation here?
Yeah, but then if you think about it, like a lot of parents abandon their children.
Mhm. Mhm. I know. And it's hard. That's not a it's not a black and white conversation, you know?
Yeah, but I just find it just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, I know.
if you're taking care of someone and
Mm,
if you already went through the rabbit hole of raising children and caring for
mhm.
them, put a burden on them when life is lifing.
Yes. I agree. I agree.
So, how are some ways in which you can make these sort of fun and because at least for me in particular, when I approach these subjects with,
Mhm.
in particular, my husband, he just cringes.
Mhm.
There was this time I was telling him, like, hey, if I die or if something happens to me, Here
Mhm.
is where you go and you find all my important documents.
Mhm.
It's just this folder and it's here, but you need
Mhm.
to know where it is.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't want to talk about it. I was like, well, what's going to happen if
Yeah.
something happens? You don't know. And eventually, I don't know if he changed his card or what happened, but he forgot or the card or he changed his card. But the point is that the electric bill was not paid. And
Mhm.
he's the one who pays for that bill.
Yeah.
So I was working from home and I had no internet, no electricity. And I was like, what is going on? And I was just, okay, I'm going to see if it's the community. Okay, it's not. So it
Mhm.
is this house. And who is this electric provider? I didn't know. And I told him, like, hey, this happened to me. And it was not a bad situation, but I lost 3 hours of my time trying to figure out that.
Yeah.
So how do you make these fun in a way that everybody's okay? This is not a fun topic, but let's make it fun.
Yeah. That is that's even a better question because I mean we're talking about, being sick, we're talking about passing away. What I have found, Isabel, is first just acknowledging it. Just first acknowledging, okay, this is not going to be fun. It's almost the same analogy when a doctor's giving you a shot and they're like, "Hey, it's about to sting." And so you're like, "All right, like it's going to sting, it's going to come up." I think the worst thing to do is to act like it is just going to be a fun conversation, right? So like coming in like, "Yeah, like this is going to be great. We're going to talk about this," and like being overly excited because yeah, I mean, it's not this very, very exciting topic. So the first thing is acknowledgement, just saying, "Hey, this is not the most exciting topic. However, it's important." And then the second thing that I've personally done, but I've also seen is really just lean on the relationship. So whoever you're talking to, you know, not if you're having a talk around, let's say estate planning or, you know, caregiving or whatever it is, there needs to be moments you're talking to that person that they know that they you just care about them. And you're not just talking through all the weeds and the details of, this harder topic. And so for me, when I'm, talking with different people about these types of situations, yeah, you want to talk through the important details, but sometimes like you have to know that, hey, we're both human, right? And yes, I'm here to help you with certain parts of your plan, but also, like, I care about you and I want to know what you like, what you don't like, and, what you do, like, what are your hobbies and just things that you care about. Because if I know that, then I can know, okay, how can I bring this conversation up in the right way? Because if you come in, Isabel, and I'm like, all right, you need this, and this is what the cost is going to be, and all of this, and it's going to be terrible if something happens. Well, obviously, that's going to be like, all right, I don't even know if I even want to have this next conversation, right? So those are the two things that I've really went through that have helped. The first is just acknowledging, hey, this isn't going to be an exciting conversation. It's important. It's going to be exciting. And the second is just really sitting there across the table for somebody and just understanding them as a person and treating the conversation still personable. Because if you treat it like very businesslike, very, down to the point and just worried about all the details, the person's gonna, the anxiety is gonna keep going up, right? Because they're like, oh, okay, like I'm thinking about this, especially as humans, the more that we think about something, it just gets in our head. And so those are the two big things that I have focused on when having those conversations is acknowledgement and just treating them, as people.
I had so several podcasts ago I
Mhm.
interviewed a death doula. And we were talking, she mentioned how death can be beautiful.
Mhm.
So, do you feel that a lot of these topics are hard because as a society we see them as hard?
That's Isabel, you've got the right question today. This is good. I believe, yes, what you said. I think we look at that whole process as just hard, terrible, and which in some ways it is. In other ways, we as humans are always thinking of the worst case scenario and usually 20 steps ahead. So, for example, if we're talking about passing away or death, it's never in a good tone. Like if I would ask somebody, hey, how do you think about your death or funeral? Usually it's like, oh, people are crying, all these things. However, if someone were to say, actually, I feel like people would be happy and celebrate it, you never hear that ever. And so
No.
I think part of that as a society is a big thing to consider. I also think, and this is just this is like a more extensive conversation. I'm kind of going really big picture here, but I think we are scared about it because we don't have the right plan. And so, we're leaving people astray. And this is going to seem a little, cliche and cheesy. We're not doing the things we're doing today to be happy today. Because when
I totally agree with you.
because the more, and trust me, I personally, like anybody in life, we have gone through ups and downs, and it's taken me some time to realize this. The more that you are aligned with what you love to do, you're not worried about the future. And when you're not aligned with what you really feel like you're meant to do, there's so many bad thoughts ahead. It's like, oh, what about this? What about this? And the reason why I say that is because I bet you, Isabel, when you're the most happiest, it's usually when you're pretty busy and you're doing a lot of things that you feel like are really meaningful. And
Yes.
so that
That's why I
is,
keep adding into my plate.
yeah, well, there's a difference between like being really busy and then, um, but I'd say those are the two takeaways I have from it is like, yeah, number one, I think as a society, we look at that as just a really bad process. But secondly, that whole conversation is not good to think about when you're not aligned with what you really love to do.
Anything else you want to share with our audience?
Well, first, me, Isabel, I have just really enjoyed, talking with you. And the questions were not just about, hey, why is this important and why is financial planning so critical? I mean, these were big picture philosophical questions that like personally I'm going to think about this weekend, and I'm going to think like, yeah, why do we look at this way? And so I just want to thank you for not only having me on, but also just the amazing questions to really think about, yeah, why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we helping people? And, I'll say just going back to really the premise of what we discussed is, yeah, building out the right plan is important. But I will say, like, we're all people. And I know it's like it sounds so simple. But if we just sat down and cared about each other and cared about ourselves too, a lot of stress would go away. And so that's really my final takeaways is with all these different topics is really just caring about others. And if we can do that, it it does sound cliche, it would make a lot of the world a better place, people a lot happier.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a delightful conversation.
Yeah. Really enjoyed it, Isabel.